right? You can't see me, right?
We see you fine.
Got it. That's my box. All right. Thank you.
All right. So let's do this. All right. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the AFWERX DoD SBIR-STTR special session. I am your host, convening host today, Dr. J. Chris Ford with the Florida National University Applied Research Center. Today's symposium is a collaboration with Warrior-Centric Health and Rally Point. We welcome all of our guests, all of our Department of Defense guests, and all those who are interested in this topic. The topic of today's discussion is optimizing healthcare for female warfighters. It's a virtual symposium. It is being recorded. A couple of items to get started. Unless you are a speaker, keep your microphone muted. And then if you have questions at any point in time during the symposium, put them into the chat function, and then I will field them, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So as an agenda for today, I'm gonna give a quick overview of the Applied Research Center and our collaboration with Warrior-Centric Health and the SBIR-STTR program with AFWERX. And then we'll hear from Warrior-Centric Health and Rally Point concerning our topic today. So I am Dr. J. Chris Ford. As stated, I head up the IP to Market program, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Agency. And the program is specific about growing innovative companies such as Warrior-Centric Health through partnerships. And specifically, we have an initiative focused on SBIR-STTR. FIU is in business to partner with high-tech companies such as Warrior-Centric Health and others. We run a number of other programs at the university, including an incubator program called IP Market, SBIR program, which is centered today, as well as tech venture courses. We have a specific, unique focus relative to our conversation today around healthcare and data analytics. And we really want to see our warfighters and our DoD clients and customers really take advantage of the opportunities we're going to talk about today. As a quick overview of the Applied Research Center, we have a number of research programs that are open for business collaboration, specifically as subs or primes, especially for STTR opportunities and SBR opportunities. But relevant to our conversation today, we have a deep track record, 30+ years of working with federal customers, including the Department of Energy, and for our conversation today, the Department of Defense. We have specific facilities, resources, and experts who are specifically in the space of big data, analytics, applied AI, as we call it internally, cybersecurity, and we do a number of other things related to innovation, tech transfer, and commercialization. So without further ado, pass the microphone to Ron Steptoe, who is from Warrior-Centric Health, and he will talk about his efforts there at Warrior-Centric Health for our conversation. Ron, I'll get you to conversation teed up.
Great, thank you, Chris. And it's been an absolute pleasure being here with the FIU team. It's been a tremendous collaboration so far. So we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with FIU, Florida National University, as well as the AFWERX program. And so we look forward to sharing with you today a bit of the history of Warrior-Centric Health and what we're focused on today. So with that in mind, one of the things I did want to share with you is when we look at Warrior-Centric Health, when we look at Warrior-Centric Health, one of the things I wanted to share with you is a bit of our history and who are the founders of Warrior-Centric Health. Well, Dr. Lewis and myself co-founded the company several years ago, actually when the Walter Reed crisis happened in 2008. And one of the things that we were focused on was understanding the importance addressing many of the issues that were in the RAND Corporation report, specifically speaking about in the Visible Wounds report, about there needed to be a platform of educating providers on the unique military culture, the phenomena of post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, as well as making sure that there was a unified system of being able to not only train healthcare providers and staff, but how were we able to track that training? How were we able to determine what remediations would be needed, And then how would we make sure that that remediation was done in such a way that we'd be able to see if there was measured impact as it relates to the training. So Dr. Lewis and I, a little background on me, I'm a West Point grad, class of 1987. My wife is also my classmate from the academy. We spent several years in the military as Army officers, had a chance to work for a major pharmaceutical company for about 14 years. That's where I had an opportunity to meet Dr. Lewis, who is a 25-year Navy physician, family practice doc. She head up research at University of Health Sciences University, and she's known as one of the top healthcare disparities and health disparities experts in the country. We're able to bring together a lot of what we learned as it relates to healthcare disparities, vulnerable population, health equity, into the framework of how we address many of the needs of our veteran and military community as well as their families. With that being said, I want to give you that bit of a backdrop on experience, and I have a particular interest in this particular area as we're talking about female warfighters and the healthcare that we need to provide to them. That being said, we've seen a lot in the news lately, specifically as it relates to our female and women warfighters. And some of the areas that we have seen some advancements in the military recognize that we really need to make sure that we have a women-centric approach to not only the readiness of our service members and our active duty women, but also the equipment and the care that they are given. Some of the new news that you've seen now is talking about the fact that now women that wear combat armor particularly see that that armor has been designed primarily for men, and that's changing now as of 2020. We've also seen that the Air Force has been very forward-leaning as it relates to providing funding to actually develop systems that will allow female pilots to actually be able to relieve themselves while they're in the air and in flight. One of the other things that we're seeing is that the nursing mothers being able to have access to refrigerators under the new Air Force rules. And the DoD has even recognized that they needed to move forward as it relates to health reproductive survey as it relates to the specific needs of our female.
This is the effort to transform the landscape.
A little bit of feedback, thank you. One of the areas that I think it's important for us to take a look at specifically as it relates to the military is when we talk about women warfighters, what are some of the health challenges that are posed by them or to them compared to what we see as it relates to our men warfighters, as well as our non-military women. So a few things. Number one, when we look at our female warfighters, again, the physiology of women actually increases their risk for certain injuries. We also see that the clothing and equipment, as we mentioned before, can contribute to injury. Pregnancy, obviously, is a challenge that can happen when we're talking about readiness. Urogenital health care is a major concern that we've seen in the recent Defense Health Board report. Sexual assault and harassment, significant challenges that we're looking to address in the military. Disordered eating, as well as endocrine disruption. Now, why the specific focus on the active duty woman as it relates to our service and their ability to fight and be ready? Well, one of the reasons is because it's the right thing to do. Number two, there's a movement within the healthcare space, if you will, as it relates to women's healthcare in general. If we look at the broader women's healthcare sector, if you will, it's an emerging sector that's taking place and a lot of focus on specific issues as it relates to women's healthcare globally. We see advancements in things such as, again, not only menopause, osteoporosis, issues that relates to reproductive health, infertility, and also cancer, specifically breast cancer. We realize that breast cancer, and we're seeing about 2 million women suffer from breast cancer every year, and that's about 15% of the deaths are caused by breast cancer. And we see that our service members and our female veterans have significantly higher incidence of cancer compared to the general population. So let's specifically dig into some of the data that's come out of the Defense Health Report. A few things that have been brought out is looking at the fact when we talk about acute injuries by sex, we see that our service women have a higher incidence across the age groups as it relates to acute injuries by sex for the active service or active component of our service members. But when we look at, again, the cumulative traumatic injuries by sex, we see that the older an active duty service woman is, the significantly higher incidence and severity of injury that she endures. And so we have some data points that, again, are sharing with us or being proposed to us that we know that there's disparities as it relates to the incidence of injury, both traumatic as well as acute. The other thing that's important to take a look at from the Defense Board's report is looking at the time and with a life cycle, if you will, as it relates to active duty women's readiness from pre-accession to the point that they make a decision to either re-enlist or to continue with their commission. Some of the information that has been brought out in this particular report, which again, as you can see, released in 2020, looked at the issue of, again, initial training. During initial training, we see that there's a 0.7% women fail to complete their basic military training due to injury, and that's 1.6 times higher than the male rate. They also have a 2 times greater separation in the first year due to disabilities compared to men. When we look at the first duty station, we see that 7% have unattended pregnancy, which is 50% higher than we see as it relates to their civilian counterparts. And about 57% have limited duty compared to active duty men. When we look at deployments, we see again about 10% of the visits for healthcare are for UTI. And again, about 1.8% have led to hospitalizations and or medevacs when in the field. And 10% have experienced sexual assault. When we look at family planning, again, we see about 8.3% leave the service for family reasons compared, and this is 16% higher, or 16 times higher than the men's rate. And when we look at pregnancy, again, complications, that's increased 100% between 2001 and 2010. So where we find ourselves today, specifically as we look at the 55% of women reporting some level of sexual harassment, 25% report some level of sexual assault over their career. The key thing that we have to take a look at when we look at, again, the re-enlistment is that making sure that we can decrease the disparity that exists as it relates to when they make a decision to leave the military or tread out of the military. We need to figure out how we close that gap. And one of the ways we need to close that gap is making sure we're providing our service women with the proper equipment, the proper care, so they can be their best as they are looking to be provide to the nation with being ready. So some of the things that we take a look at, this is not anything new. In fact, the DoD has been looking at this for many years, some would say multiple decades. In fact, in 1994, the DoD created the Defense Women's Health Research Program. And that report, they identified knowledge disparities specifically in areas of musculoskeletal injuries, reproductive hazards, and field care for gynecological health. However, in 2015, these same gaps in knowledge, research, and policy, as well as gaps in contraception, availability, and mental health were also noted. So this is not anything that we don't know. It's not anything that has not been studied. The question is, what are we going to do as a nation to make sure we improve the readiness of our female warfighters so that they can be all that they can be and all that the nation needs them to be? With that in mind, the Department of Defense, with the Defense, again, Health Review Board, had a few recommendations and findings. Part of the findings and recommendations looked at the fact that specifically noting that many of the recommendations have not led to sustained improvement. In fact, that shortfall has occurred because of limited disseminations of the actual findings that we have a ton of information on. The inattention to the implementation and unassigned accountability. And this report has really put a stake in the ground to say we need to do better. So part of the recommendations specifically was making sure that we've identified active duty women's healthcare needs, improve accessibility and the quality of those healthcare services, and optimize the individual readiness of our servicemen. Now, all of this plays into what the Defense Health Agency has recognized and stated what we consider to be quadruple aim. Quadruple aim is, number one, the experience of care of our service members, population health as it relates to specifically what is unique about the military, about our active duty, our National Guard, and our reserves during their service time, and understanding them as a population, and how do we begin to address their healthcare needs. How do we do this in a way where we're able to reduce per capita costs, and while optimizing readiness, the ability to go and do the nation's business. And this was outlined in the population health procedural instruction, where actually every military treatment facility has a requirement to establish a population health platform at their MTFs. And we're very pleased to say that Warrior Centric Health is partnered with the 59th Medical Wing of the Air Force and leading that particular effort. Now, one of the key points that was brought out by the Defense Health Board was that technology promises to be a scalable and low-cost means to make sure that we're delivering not only health care, health information, counseling to our active duty women, wherever they're stationed and wherever they're deployed in the world. And so we believe that there are capabilities in place to be able to address that. So at Warrior Centric Health, we currently have an integrated population health solution, the first of its kind, and I'll share a little bit of some of the dynamics as it relates to that. We are now partnered with Kaiser Permanente, Trinity Health, which is the 5th largest health system in the country, that actually has a very specific, unique focus on military and veteran health. Vizient, which is the nation's largest group purchasing organization representing about 3,400 hospitals, actually has a veteran population health solutions offering, which is our platform. And Microsoft for Startups. We're very pleased to be in that program and working very closely with Microsoft. Our platform is built on Azure, and through that partnership, we're bringing the best technology to make sure that we can address not only population health for the broader military community, but specifically in this particular case, partnering with hopefully one of you, a military treatment facility or someone that has an interest in research and development, making sure that we utilize the technologies available to improve the care provided to our female. And so Dr. Lewis and I and our team at Warrior Centric Health has set out on the mission to make sure that we bring the best of what's happening in the commercial healthcare into the Department of Defense, and also making sure we're tech transferring out the best that the military has, because the military has for decades, centuries plus, been one of the key innovators in healthcare. And with that being said, we believe that there's tech transfer back and forth, and the SBIR and STTR programs allow us to do that. We're currently, again, an AFWERX funded company. We've won 3 SBIR and STTR contracts. We're again partnered with the 59th Medical Wing on our population health platform, and just absolutely thrilled to be partnered now with Florida International University and the Applied Research Center to address not only this critical issue for female warfighters, but broader issues for our military and veteran communities. So what is the capability? What is the tech that we're talking about? It's not only just understanding a lot of the data that we've shared that's available as it relates to disparities and the areas that we need to be improving in healthcare and benchmarking that, but how do we take that gaps in data, create the clinical and cultural education for our healthcare providers? Because the fact of the matter is there isn't a uniformed amount of content where providers and staff need to be trained as it relates to continuing medical education and continuing education And Dr. Lewis and I have partnered with many folks around the country to help bring that to bear, as well as outreach. How are we communicating with the providers and the staff are learning as part of their continuing medical education and continuing education? How is that disseminating and getting disseminated down to our female warfighters so that they can understand the things that they can do to help improve their health? That capacity currently does not exist uniformly, not only in the commercial sector, but also in the Department of Defense. And that's what Warrior Centric Health has brought to the table and why we are a SBIR and STTR technology company. We leverage, again, digitally on our platforms at Microsoft, being able to measure and assess what are some of the baseline data points that's available through multiple sources of data, but pulling that together to really paint a picture of what are the gaps, the education through our learning management system, and also the community outreach. So what does that look like? It looks like having access to this prime content, both continuing medical education and continuing education, half-hour blocks, available 24/7, with a certificate for that particular content being consumed and tested. We have accreditations, not only joint accreditations, but we have accreditations, again, with multiple bodies. In fact, many of the main bodies that really provide continuing medical education and continuing education, our content is all accredited by, as well as joint accreditation. And does it work? We've been funded by TACTRIC, the Technology and Research Center out of Fort Detrick, and work that we initially did at Walter Reed and at Fort Hood, Texas. And we've been able to show significant knowledge gains, changes in belief, improvement in patient communications, significant improvements as it relates to cultural competency, and integrating a cultural perspective into the treatment planning process. We know that the way that we educate works, and one of the reasons why we're taking what we've developed for over a decade within the military and making sure that we're having a focus on bringing those best practices to improving the care for our female warfighters. So we've right now have in the marketplace 3 dynamic modules, all course directed by Dr. Lewis. And these particular areas are focused, again, on areas affecting women's musculoskeletal and other clinical health conditions, osteoporosis, musculoskeletal issues, as well as cardiovascular disease and many other topics. So where's the opportunity to partner? For anyone that is part of the Air Force that is interested in taking this journey with FIU and Warrior Centric Health to improve the care of our female warfighters, we have 2 opportunities at stake. Number 1 is a direct to phase 2, which is a $1.25 million SBIR funded opportunity to work with our partner, again, over the next 20 or so months to address this issue and making sure that we're getting the content that needs to be developed to specifically address these disparities. Number 2, FIU and Warrior Centric Health are working together with an STTR to address, and we have, again, about $750,000 opportunity for us to work with STTR funding. As it relates to the first, we haven't available through January 30th. We need to identify a potential Air Force partner that will partner with us. Again, I'll share you the contact of Kelly Collier, who is our program manager, in the next slide, and we'll be able to share with you that opportunity, and then the STTR towards the end of February. So these are all very fast-moving, great opportunities. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. I'm Ron Steptoe, along with my colleague, Dr. Lewis. Kelly Collier is the main point of contact. She is simply Kelly at Warrior Centric Health. And if you're interested in seeing how you might want to partner with us for these funding opportunities, we would love to see how we can work and work with your organization to be a change agent and improving. So desperately, what we need to do is making sure that our warfighters are all that they can be, for all the nation needs them to be. Thank you very much. Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. So next up, we have some technical difficulties here, but next up, we're going to have pass the virtual microphone to Joe Berto from Rally Point, who has done some amazing work in this space, specifically with our veteran population. I will not steal his brilliant thunder. So I'll pass the screen to Joe Berto from Rally Point.
Thank you, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, let me get some screen situated. Go right ahead. We're just fine.
Sounds great. I'm going to share my screen here.
All right, you got it. There you go.
Okay. Is that coming up okay in full screen?
It is partially chopped.
Okay. I've got full screen on my machine.
Let's see. Try to reshare again.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, that's one window. I'm going to go full screen now. Let me know if it comes in.
Same problem. Try again. Just the entire, share your entire screen. I think that's what you did this time.
It could be a problem just as the window. Let me try the entire screen.
And it worked earlier.
All right, let me try from here. Hang on 1 second. Is that any better?
It's not showing.
Interesting. Well, I can try this and try maximizing my window. Maybe that's the best option. So I can see it there.
Yeah, that's fine there.
That's viewable? Okay.
Yep, that's doable. Yep.
All right. Let me at least make that as large as possible. That'll be probably the best we can do. Okay. Great. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ron. It's a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity. Excuse me. My name is Dr. Joseph Berto. I'm a senior scientist and a neuroscientist by training at Rally Point. And I'll get into a little bit what Rally Point is and what Rally Point does if you're not familiar with our organization. As a neuroscientist, I'm interested in the biological origin of diseases. During graduate school, this was predominantly Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease for me. And now that I've enlisted, as it were, with Rally Point, Dave Gowell, our CEO, has been very supportive of me thinking about and working on how our social media and peer support platform can be used to benefit those struggling with traumatic brain injury and PTSD, amongst other health concerns. I'm going to brief you on how we see ourselves sitting at the intersection of some very exciting possibilities in this field. And my title here is a question because this is just one area of active research and thought and proposal development for us at Rally Point. Okay. Is it advancing properly? You can still see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I don't have a military background myself, so it's taken me a little bit of time to become more conversant with military acronyms and the jargon and the DoD hierarchy, but it certainly does help having a World War II transport named after me, or rather a distant cousin of mine. My granduncle's son, I believe it was Ronald Berto, who was killed in action at Guadalcanal. And this vessel is a point of pride for myself and my family. Even though I never personally served, I'm a big believer in the mission that Dave, our CEO, has laid out when I signed on to Rally Point earlier in 2021. My mom was a mental health nurse. She unfortunately died from complications with her own mental health struggles. And many of those struggles are pervasive throughout her side of the family. Now, I bring this up not for sympathy, but because as a society, we need to be as comfortable talking about mental health challenges as we are diabetes or heart disease or any other physical disease if we're going to make admitting our struggles and seeking help for them more common than it is now. I came to Rally Point earlier this year because it was appealing to me as a scientist that we're using our platform to help a population that unfortunately has more than its fair share of mental health challenges due to the nature of military service. So what is Rally Point? If you're not familiar with Rally Point, we are the premier digital platform for the military community to come together and discuss military topics, both socially and professionally. Our members include military service members, veterans, family members, caregivers, survivors, and supporters of those in uniform. Rally Point connects members and provides tools to succeed along their entire lifetime journey, from recruit through retirement and beyond. Members build peer relationships across branches, generations, and conflicts forged by the common bond of service. Within our community, members can build their professional network, ask questions, share photos and stories, and connect with members in a secure environment, and also explore educational and career opportunities. We have approximately 1.8 million members on the site who have created 7 million public posts and discussions to date about all aspects of military life, including trauma, stress, and PTSD. What you see on your screen now is called a concept map, and it's okay if it's not viewable to you at home, but you'll get the gist from the color and the layout here of what I'm talking about. It describes some of the vulnerabilities, risk factors, and protective factors that are involved in suicidal behavior, one of the unfortunate downstream results of PTSD. This is an active area of investigation for Rally Point and our collaborators at Harvard University under an Air Force SBIR contract for how we can ethically and responsibly use the public data shared by our members to improve detection and prevention of suicide, and for which we have already made 26 suicide interventions. Rather than wait until a suicide attempt becomes imminent, we are very interested in moving upstream and better understanding these vulnerabilities, risk factors, and protective factors that are regularly being discussed on our site. If we can support the ongoing and everyday needs of our service members, veterans, family members, caregivers, and survivors on our site, then we can hopefully have a positive impact on this insidious societal problem. Evidence suggests that the prevalence of PTSD in deployed U.S. military personnel may be as high as 15%. According to the VA, approximately 11% to 20% of post 9/11 combat vets and 12% of Gulf War veterans have PTSD in a given year. However, diagnosis and treatment can be problematic due to biases and self-disclosure of symptoms, mental health stigma within the military populations and in society in general, resource limitations identifying those at risk and for providing proper treatment, and also resistance to initiating and completing treatment. One of the ways that PTSD diagnosis can be improved is through the implementation of objective biological markers of disease. There are hundreds of peer-reviewed papers in the literature that have investigated PTSD biomarkers, including those markers that circulate in our own blood, but they are not specific enough yet for use on their own. For example, many of these biomarkers are related to inflammation, which is increased in many with PTSD. However, inflammation is not specific to PTSD. We are partnering with a blood biomarker analytic biotech company with whom we are further investigating this blood biomarker opportunity and working on developing a more specific test and panel for PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And a possible example of many for how Rally Point could be used to advance the science around PTSD and to improve PTSD diagnosis is to also include ethical digital phenotyping, as it's called. Digital phenotyping is the moment-by-moment quantification of individual behavior, essentially, when and where individuals normally interact with their world, which commonly includes social media, like Rally Point. This phenotyping results in the identification of what we call psychosocial markers, which are languages and behaviors, typically through machine learning and natural language processing technology and approach. Excuse me. This image on the screen now is one particular screen capture of a post from Rally Point made within a TBI and PTSD discussion thread on our site. And from my perspective, it nicely illustrates the opportunity we have to use our data for good. We can use these machine learning approaches to identify words and phrases that represent the everyday lives that our members lead, including their struggles with injuries and diseases like TBI and PTSD. With 1.8 million members, approximately 7 million public posts, and billions of pieces of data, we may be uniquely suited to provide this analytical benefit to the military and veteran community, who again are unfortunately overrepresented in TBI and PTSD cases. In addition to diagnosis using the public data on our platform, we also want to investigate opt-in methods through intelligent advertising for evidence-based programs to encourage our audience to self-select and help us iteratively improve outcomes from one, app-based self-help and 2, connections to other programs that we can offer. Ultimately, we may be able to partner with experts in the PTSD field to integrate treatment solutions directly into our platform. If we are identifying individuals who are struggling on our platform, and many of these individuals are already reaching out to their peers on our platform to discuss their struggles, as we know there are, it may make sense to do what we can ethically and intelligently to help them on our platform as well. So what are we looking for? Currently, we're in phase 1 of our SBIR-supported work to develop our unique PTSD multimodal marker detection technology. During this particular phase, we're investigating the existing public data that we have on our platform, as well as identifying future customers and end users who are interested in working together on this insidious problem. We have one committed Director of Psychological Health Air Force Reserve end user signed on currently, and we're currently seeking additional end users and future customers. All of the funds for this effort are provided by AFRL and AFWERX. There's no financial support needed from our end user or customer signatories. The customer designation really just means that if we develop a successful prototype during this upcoming phase of our project, we can figure out a contracting path together to scale it and for purchasing at that point. But there are no binding commitments to any partnership at this time. So to recap, our members are talking about everything the VA has identified as the key milestones in military service and veteran life. Our existing SBIR award makes doing the work I described easier with the government, academic, and private partners because SBIR award satisfies the contracting competition requirement. Our platform has earned the trust of so many people at elevated risk of PTSD and TBI to share their unfiltered challenges and questions about all aspects of life. And we are currently working to understand the vast amount of sentiment and experience entrusted to us. I would love to hear your thoughts around how we can help our audience most effectively and expeditiously in these areas. So as Chris and Rod had said, we'd be happy to take questions in the chat. This is my contact information and also Dave's contact information, our CEO, and be happy to address anything that we're not able to address today via these avenues. Thank you very much. And Chris and Ron, I will turn it back over to you. Stop sharing my screen. And you should have control again.
Yes, thank you. So what we'll do, we'll start off, and I saw a couple of questions come up through the chat. We'll start first. I'm going to pose a question to Ron. Ron, for our DoD potential customers, can you talk about how warrior-centric health, what value add that they would provide, and how they would synchronize with existing DoD systems, and particularly their healthcare and their medical treatment facilities?
Chris, that's a great question in reference to, again, just to repeat, how does warrior-centric health assist Department of Defense personnel in the actual requirements they have today? Well, one of the things that we do is we actually read many of the mandates and the reports that are coming out from the Defense Health Agency. We keep a keen eye. One example is the mandate from the Defense Health Agency dated August of 2019, where there's actually a policy directive, if you will, and instructions for population health mandate. Now, the population health mandate is, again, the DoD and the Defense Health Agency recognizing that populations have certain trends. There are certain things that exist in the population, and there are things we can learn from those populations if we look at them in a macro sense in order to get down to treatment of N of 1, that individual patient. And so the technologies and the data exist for us to be able to do that. So one of the things that we do is, one, many of the military treatment facilities are unaware that actually there is this policy instruction and directive that each military treatment facility create a military treatment facility have a population health program instituted. So one of the things that we have done is provide an answer to that mandate, and one of the reasons why we're working so fervently with the 59th Medical Wing, as they're one of the first medical systems and treatment facilities on behalf of the Air Force to take this upon. The second thing is when we look at the Defense Health Board report, again, we read these things and we look at how can our platform help the military and military treatment facilities and our customers address needs that have been identified, not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now, but today, because it impacts our readiness today. And one last thing I'll share with you is there was a recent report, the behavioral health report that came out recently and published in 2018 that spoke to the issue of presenteeism and absenteeism as a byproduct of chronic diseases, such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia. Well, we're working right now with the 59th Medical Wing to actually develop course content on cardiovascular disease for the broader military community, respiratory health, as well as musculoskeletal. So what we bring to the table is the ability to, again, look at real-time issues, take them from policy, implement them into solution sets so they can get within the healthcare system, to get to the providers to understand the new best practices as medicine is changing so rapidly, we keep an eye on that. And so that it can get to the warfighter, so that the warfighter can do his or her job on behalf of the nation. So again, I think the key answer to that is that warrior-centric health is and are your eyes and ears on what's happening policy-wise and getting that translated into the field. Excellent,
excellent. Thank you, Ron. There was a question posed to to Joe, that Ryan at Rally Point answered, but I want to build upon that. So Joe, could you talk about the work that you've done with the VA and how you hope to perhaps expand upon that with some potential Air Force or DoD customers?
Right, yeah, so it was Ryan, and Ryan Callahan is our Vice President of Marketing at Rally Point. So Ryan, thank you for jumping in the chat as well. Excuse me. Ryan and Dave Gall unfortunately couldn't be in the meeting today. He had another responsibility taken care of. They have been the ones that have been spearheading those VA-led efforts. So I would say any VA-directed questions, I would be happy to pass along to Dave and to Ryan as appropriate. So I've been focusing, mostly on this Air Force directed contract that I have not had as much experience with the VA-directed efforts.
I can probably touch on that.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. So we signed a MOU with the VA in 2018, and basically our MOU was around the theory that we'll help our members get access to the right services at the right time. So we've done various different projects with the VA where we'll host Q&A events where experts will come on our site and answer our member questions around specific topics. I think a good way to kind of view the way we work with the VA is if you've ever seen the veteran journey map, there's discussions that are happening on Rally Point every day that go all along that journey. So from recruit through retirement and beyond. And we try to work with the VA to get our members access to the right resources at that right point in their journey. So and then I also put in the chat that we renewed. It's an MOA now with the VA last year, so that renews us for another 3 years as a partner.
Excellent. Thank you for adding that. Another question for Rally Point there was posed by Nathan. I'm not murder your wonderful last name, but Nathan posed a question related to dual servicemen. So when you have a couple that's dealing with mental health, I know, Joe, you may have read that, but you have a couple that's dealing with the mental health issue. How is that in terms of helping couples come to healing and some of the needs in terms of research and transmission of that type of efforts to the public? Joe, you've probably seen that. You'd like to speak to that from Nathan?
Yeah, Nathan, I was just responding to the question in the chat. This is a good opportunity to talk about it live. That's a really good question. So the PTSD efforts and TBI efforts that I talked about today, this is an active area of work for us right now with these Air Force contracts that we have. So the first step along this path is identifying, this better kind of objective identification and diagnosis of PTSD and TBI and mental health and emotional struggles. As I had mentioned, our goal for the future ideally would be to integrate some sort of treatment into the platform or to get people the particular care that they need when they're identified with these particular challenges. If you're familiar with Dr. Craig Bryan from Ohio State University and of the VA as well, Dr. Bryan has done some excellent work with cognitive behavioral therapy, as many others have. CBT, excuse me, can be very effective at treating the symptoms of PTSD. But as I mentioned today, some of the same challenges I discussed still hold in trying to identify the individuals that may be struggling with these challenges just because of the sheer number of individuals that may be suffering with PTSD and limited access to resources. So treatments work. And I think I would point you to, since I'm not a clinician myself, I'm not a clinical psychologist or psychologist, I would point you to some of Dr. Bryan's work and some of these other clinical psychologists that have more experience with the treatment. I think I would imagine this is something that has come up, right, with the dual service couples, each having their own mental health and emotional challenges, right? That can obviously complete the picture. So that is a very good question, and I'm curious actually to dive into some of the research myself to see what's out there. But that's a very good question, and I'll look more into that as well.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Joe, for that response.
Yeah.
So, building upon that, I mean, that's a very specific case about couples dealing, with various mental health challenges who are service men and women. A question for Ron: can you talk about some use cases, examples of MTFs, and how they might address and benefit from a collaboration?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. So let me go back again to the 59th Medical Wing. 59th Medical Wing, if many don't know, it's considered the schoolhouse of Air Force medicine. Again, it's in San Antonio, Texas. And one of the things we were able, and we're in the process of doing right now, is we have our foundational, what we call our boot camp, where we educate providers on things such as military culture, cultural competency, patient-provider communication, and post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. Now, let me talk a little bit about why that baseline is important, and then I'll move into what we're developing with them now, and then where we see working with the next partners and digging a little bit deeper in the female warfighter health realm. So first, when we look at the foundational coursework, one of the things that we're able to do, and there's a recognition that about 18,000 military medical billets, if you will, have been reduced and are in the process of being reduced over the next 4 or 5 years. That's being backfilled with a lot of civilian healthcare providers that are coming on board and being hired by military treatment facilities, as well as when we look at a lot of our service members, because of the change in capacity, many of our service members, specifically military retirees and their families, are going out into the commercial sector, where a lot of those providers have not been trained on unique health conditions that are resulting from military service and or exposure. So let's go back to the 59th. With that being said, one of the areas that we've looked at in identifying the reports and working with the 59th is we realize, again, this issue of medical readiness. Let's go back again to the population health mandate, as well as Defense Health Agency's quadruple aim. One of the things that we need to make sure and is about readiness. And we realize that chronic diseases such as hypertension, hypercholesterolemia for cardiovascular disease, respiratory health issues, as well as musculoskeletal issues are some of the key injuries and illnesses that can cause presenteeism and absenteeism at work. Basically, people aren't fully engaged to be able to deliver on the mission. The 59th Medical Wing recognized that this is an area based on these particular gaps that we needed to develop and partner with to develop coursework in this particular area. And we're in the process of doing that now in those specific 3 disease states. The reason, and let me speak to the respiratory health one specifically, the VA has recently recognized that not only is there are conditions that are connected, sinusitis, rhinitis, as well as asthma, are now presumptive conditions as it relates to exposure in Southwest Asia. So the respiratory health course will be one of the first, we believe the first in the country, to actually be addressing this issue specifically. So with the 59th, we're able to be right on time, in real time, delivering medical education and training that's needed to impact readiness today based on the mandates of the Defense Health Agency. If we take that same model and look at now female warfighters, when we look at 3 of the areas that I spoke to, and there are many others, but musculoskeletal issues as it relates to the active duty servicewoman, reproductive health issues, as well as gynecological issues, genitourinary and gynecological issues. How do we address digging deep into the coursework that needs to be developed So providers have that in hand. Not only is it the education, but we also provide and create the patient education that those providers now can share with that active duty servicewoman, so that as she's out doing her duty, she knows what she may need to be looking for, what she may be to address in a way that will reduce the incidence, for example, of a UTI that could lead into some other major issues as it relates to her ability to perform her duty, and or lead to potentially some other issues, even if it's prolonged infertility. So our capabilities and what we do is making sure that, again, we work with providing that timely education and training, as well as the communication pathways and the data to our service component partners.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Ron. Well, let me open up to the audience. I know we have some questions already posed in the chat. We've gone through those, but has anyone has a burning thought that maybe they would like to turn their microphones on and ask a direct question to either Ron or Joe? Well, here's a question that's come up from Rebecca. Has Warrior-Centric Health been involved or is interested in studies around healthcare issues with the LGBTQ plus service members?
Great question. Yes, currently, right now, we have, with our partnership that we have, specifically with Trinity, we have some content that we have been implementing with them on the ground as it relates to, again, our LGBTQI servicemen as well as women. So we have a very active interest, particularly when we look at healthcare disparities, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, whether it's warriors themselves. Obviously, our LGBTQI community suffers from many of the same the healthcare disparities as well as health disparities. And I want to say that there is a distinction. When we look at health equity, which is providing, again, making sure that all have access to care uniformly, and that care would be care that would be delivered, as Dr. Lewis always says, in order to treat individuals the same, you may need to treat them differently. And so one of the areas that is a unique focus as it relates to the LGBTQI patient population, not only in the commercial sector, but also for our veteran and active duty service members, we again do have an active interest in their healthcare needs as well as part of Legal Forward.
Maybe you could just dive deeper into what Rebecca, I'm not saying inferred, but I think it's an important kind of elephant in the room. How does Warrior-Centric Health, and I even throw this to Ron as well, how do you deal with healthcare disparities amongst group? How does your platform actually help address that issue?
So I think a few things. One thing, when we look at health disparities, I like to take it up, and Dr. Lewis, again, has really speaks to this a lot. Let's talk about health equity, because I think people think about health equity, health disparities, and think that they're the same and social determinants. So let me just lay all this out, if I can, just very quickly. So when we look at health equity is a construct. It's an aspiration. It's a place that we want to be. But in order to do that, there are actually two components that we firmly believe at Warrior-Centric Health where you can move the needle. That's in health equity, in health disparities and health care disparities. Those are two separate components of the health equity equation. On the health disparity side, the key issue and things that we want to take a look at is how do we look at social determinants of health, whether that is someone's education, their background, transportation, housing, workplace environment, and exposures. That's where we believe that the military community needs to be spoken of and highlighted a lot more. On the health care disparity side of the things is what's happening within the healthcare system. I'll give you a prime example. In the commercial healthcare sector, only 57% of hospitals even ask the question, have you served before? And less than 10% do anything with that information. Yet veterans have a significantly higher prevalence of cardiovascular disease, pulmonary disease, cancers, you name the condition, we have disparate outcomes compared to the general population. But if hospitals aren't asking the question, have they served? They don't get that social history on us. How can they possibly have any visibility on how to begin to address those needs? That is health care disparities. So we believe that addressing not only the health care disparity aspect systemically, as well as the health disparities component, any measured improvement in any one of those areas is an improvement in health equity. Those are some key distinctions that it's important to understand. And population health, the integration of the data gaps, the education gaps, the communication gaps, all integrated in a platform that works not only within the Department of Defense, or at least on the defense side, but also in the commercial side. Our same platform with a little modification here or there is the nation's first platform that operates in both universes, so that whether a service member or veteran goes to a military treatment facility or to a commercial hospital, the healthcare system of providers is being trained on the same platform, and it's also intuitive and learning. We're learning from each other.
Excellent. Dr. Lewis, I see your hand. Please unmute and speak.
Thank you. I was just going to make a brief comment around some of the things that Ron was saying. I wholeheartedly agree with his comments around health and healthcare disparities, and that sort of platform where he talks about the existence of this type of education and training, et cetera, existing in multiple universes, if you will. I'd also like to comment on the other piece that Warfighter Health does to some degree. We not only touch the healthcare professionals when you think about the teaching of old dogs new tricks, we also get those on their way to that level, meaning those healthcare professional students across the board, just like we do in those who are already practicing. And that's as important and maybe perhaps even more important because they're coming into this, and the more they know coming into it, the better it is integrated into how they practice medicine, how it's integrated into what they do every day, such that it's not a new thing they've got to learn. They already know it, and they know the importance of it, and they know how to engage it and integrate it into what they do with patients on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Joe, do you have any comments before we go into the next round of questions?
No, that was excellent.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Well, again, audience, any additional questions, thoughts that come to mind? All right, so what we'll do, and if you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but what we're doing here in this moment, I want to give both Joe and Ron an opportunity to kind of give some final thoughts, some additional thoughts that may to summarize and also highlight kind of next steps of how we can start figuring out a way to partner with our DoD customers. Start with Ron, then Joe.
Great. Well, again, Chris, thank you again for the opportunity. One of the ways of partnering, again, is looking and working with organizations such as Florida International University, leveraging, again, a lot of the intellectual property, past experiences, their partnerships, especially as small innovative companies that are looking to grow in the scale. This is a team sport. It's a team effort when we look at innovation. And again, it's important for us to have these partnerships, again, of end users, where we can make sure that we're delivering, taking many of the things that we have that have found to be successful and working, but there are adaptations that may need to be made as it relates to the defense use and defense need. So we want to make sure that we develop and augment, if necessary, our platform in the way that our DoD customers see as the highest and greatest value. So the SBIR-STTR process is a uniquely American asset, where we can bring innovation, industry, governmental needs, academic prowess together to make sure that we're solving major problems on behalf of our nation. And I can think of no greater task for us to do is to make sure that our service members, our veterans, and our families and their families are honored for their service and their sacrifice. And if we have the data, the information, the capabilities, the technology, and most importantly, the will to deliver what we promised, then that is the mission set here. And we'd be honored to partner with any of the military partners that are out there that want to be on our journey to, one, fulfill the mandates that are out there, fill the gaps that exist, and work collaboratively to bring our nation one step further to being what it needs to be to continue the life that we all have learned to love, but is constantly a threat with near peer and we need to make sure that we have the best in class to make sure we can deal with our near-peer adversaries.
Excellent. Before I get to Joe, got a really great question from Jim Hurst, from MITRE, one of our partner entities that we work with at FIU. Jim asked a really good question. Does Warrior-Centric Health have any connectivity to Southcom's POTFF, preservation of the force and family? Do you have any connections to SOCOM's preservation of the force and family work?
At this time, we do not. Would love to. As we know, SOCOM has a very, very unique mission, and we love to see how we might be able to connect with SOCOM, because again, they themselves are another subpopulation that have some different things that they have to deal with, and would love to see if there are ways to collaborate with SOCOM.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer, and thanks, Jim, for that wonderful question. Joe, you have the floor. Final thoughts. How can they partner with Rally Point? How can we work together?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Chris and Ron. So I would invite anyone in the audience, if you're not familiar with Rally Point, to check out our site at rallypoint.com, navigate around, take a look at some of the resources and opportunities we have available. Sign up to be a member if you're not one already. That's a great first call to action. And then again, as I had stated before, if you're interested in partnering with us on this PTSD or TBI work, if you're a stakeholder in that area, interested in the problem, and want to work together towards what we believe is a pretty unique solution towards diagnosis and treatment of these diseases, please reach out to myself, to Dave Gall as well, and would love to work together and talk to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for attending this wonderful webinar, this virtual symposium. It has been recorded. I will send a follow-up note for links to get in touch with both Ron, myself, and Joe. We look forward to future collaborations. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those who are viewing this recording, you will be able to connect with us, and hopefully we can come to an agreement to help support our female warfighters. Thank you all. Be safe, be well, and be in touch very soon.